Hello, this is Paul Nelson with Western Sport Floors, Wyoming Wood Floors, coming to you today from Sheridan, Wyoming. We are working on a high school gym. It's been a while since this floor has been sanded. They have some sponsorship logo here from a bank. This was a vinyl sticker logo, and it's had basically a complete failure. So this vinyl sticker has failed catastrophically, and school district, really the answer here would be to just sand this floor and repaint it entirely, but they didn't have the budget to do it right now. So the customer asked if we could just sand off this old sticker logo and paint on a new one. It isn't my ideal idea here of solving this issue, but when a customer asks us if we can do something, our first answer is yes, sir, and we try and figure it out afterwards. Now, I've never actually done exactly what we're going to do here today, so I thought I'd make a video. If you're watching the video, we feel like it turned out. If it doesn't turn out, you may not be watching this video. We're going to kind of go through what we're going to do to serve this customer's needs in this situation. Okay, so we went ahead and ordered a new logo, and this is what we call a paint stencil. So we're going to put this vinyl stencil down, we're going to paint it, remove the vinyl stencil, the paint will remain on the floor covered in finish, and we anticipate that it will be a better deal than these vinyl logos that tend to fail after a few years. So you can see how catastrophically this thing has failed. And it's not just an aesthetics issue. This is clearly a health and safety concern for kids. This is on the main part of the basketball playing surface, so we want to get this taken care of. So the first thing that we did is we outlined this logo with some blue tape, and I am going to attempt to sand the logo and the finish in this area off with a Galaxy residential sander without damaging any of these other game lines. All right, so we're at the end of the day. Of course, these logos fought us a little bit. There was a lot of resin and adhesive in that vinyl, and it plugged up my sander belts a little bit. But in the end, we got it. I'm putting a coat of sealer on this floor before we call it a day and let it sit overnight. And tomorrow, we'll go through the process of putting down those vinyl stencils and repainting the new logo on this floor. So this floor has sat overnight. The sealer has dried. We've abraded this floor and we've cleaned it. And now I'm going to find the center spot in this area that we've sanded, and we'll lay a stencil. Here we go. Okay, so now I have determined where the center spot of the floor that I sanded. It's right here. I just want to call your attention to the fact that I adjusted it a little bit so that my awl is right in a board seam. I'm going to show you why that's important in a minute. Now, the folks that we buy our paint stencils from are good enough to give us the center spot of our logo. And what I'm going to do is use this awl just to pin down this paint stencil right where I want it. Okay, so we've used our scratch awl and our predetermined center point to center this paint stencil. Let's look over here. You remember earlier I said that we got our center point into a board seam. This is a registration mark here, and it's lining up with the same seam that the awl is in. We're doing the same thing on the other side. This is just to ensure that that stencil is square to the game lines and the gymnasium floor itself. This video was never meant to be a how-to on how to lay vinyl. That's a long video, and that wasn't what I was trying to do here. But part of replacing the damaged vinyl stencil on this floor, putting down paint stencils and repainting it, part of that process is putting down paint stencils, and it's an important part of the process. Behind me, you can see our crew putting them down. We talked about how we centered the original middle panel in the area that we sanded, and then we worked out in both directions. Now, if this was a vinyl stencil, paint stencil graphic going in the center of a gym, and let's just say the thing was huge, 40 feet by 40 feet, we'd use the exact same process. We'd start in the middle and build out to the sides. What that does for you, if there's any, and inevitably there will be, discrepancies in your vinyl panels as you build out, at least instead of starting from one end and working to the other end, if you start from the middle and work out, you half your discrepancies. So that's what we're doing here. You can see our crew members are pulling off the backing, and that allows the yellow paint stencil to stick to the floor. Portion mask on top that will peel off. That will then expose the floor, and we paint on top of that then, and that's how logos are done by and large throughout the industry. So this is a little something that we've been doing this year, 2024, and that is we've been using a lot of Bona paint, the Bona Super Sport paint. Bona also makes a sealer called Bona Super Sport DTS, Deep Tone Sealer. That's what that stands for. These are very compatible products, and in conjunction with Bona, they've told us we can do this. Take a look over here. We have this paint stencil down, and before we put any paint down, we're rolling on DTS sealer. And the reason for that is we found this really helps prevent bleeding. There's inevitably some cracks in the boards, and once in a while there's a little hiccup in the vinyl where the paint can bleed under. And that's a lot of work when you pull this paint stencil up if you have a lot of bleeding. By coating the paint stencil first with a coated DTS sealer, we find that we seal up any of these little inconsistencies, and we get a much better result when we pull this paint stencil. So we finished our painting. We've let our paint dry overnight. It's nice and dry, and now we have crew members taking up the tape and the vinyl. Now when they take up the tape and the vinyl, sometimes there's a little tick here or there, and they're gonna come back and address that by scratching off any paint that is outside the vinyl line, or if there's any that avoid, they'll come back with a artist brush and touch that in. I wanted to show something specifically here on this border line that we're doing. There is a slight ridge where we sanded the floor, and that's to be expected because this floor had a lot of paint on, or a lot of finish on it, probably 25 coats or more. So you'd expect a slight ridge, and that's why I put the 2-inch border line around this logo. And so this is our logo once we get all the tape and the stencil material pulled up off of the floor. And this is what I was talking about. There's a little tick right here. Our preference would be to have none of those, but inevitably we end up with a few. We're gonna send our crew members around with a little artist brush and just make sure that we touch up any little spots in the paint that aren't as perfect as we'd like to see. So we are basically done with this project. Last night we pulled a coat of finish over this floor, and this morning we're going to pull a second coat and we'll be done. And we can take a look at this logo. Now this isn't going to match exactly perfect with the rest of this floor, but I think it blends in well enough that everybody's going to be very happy with this. Certainly better than the peeling vinyl graphic that was on this floor. And we're pretty proud of the way this looks. Really, we would have liked to have sanded this whole floor. It would have all looked better, but this is what our customer needed. This is what we did for them. And we think this looks pretty good. For Western Sport Floors and Wyoming Wood Floors, this is Paul Nelson coming to you from Sheridan, Wyoming. You make it great.